In best ball, it's not just who you draft, it's when you draft them that makes all the difference. I'm Bob Harris, and it's time to go on the hot seat. First, footballguys.com. That's your website. Appreciate you joining me here every Tuesday at this time. Hit the subscribe button, the notification bell. If you haven't already done those, probably most of you have. Also, share, hit the like button. Feel free to dislike as well and comment. Would love to hear all your thoughts on what's going on here. And we have a great guest, as usual, to put on the hot seat. This time it's Armando Marsal. He's the 2020 Football Writer of the Year, the Fantasy Sports Writers Association of America. You'll find him on the Mind of Marsal podcast, which is great. I've been on many times. And also at the Fantasy Guru website, where you find all his rankings and all that kind of good stuff as well. So, Armando, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on, Bob. It's hot in here. It's hot in here right now.
It is hot in here. I hope you get a little sweaty here. Yeah, like this is like for the man who spends half his day in a sauna. I don't know if I'm going to be hot enough. Before we dive in, I want to mention the 2025 Rookie Draft Guide. The 3.0 is available at footballguys.com. Updated it to include everything from the NFL Draft. Now that it's behind us and we're diving into best ball drafts, as we'll be talking about today, you'll find team fits, opportunity analysis, trade values, everything you need to crush your rookie drafts and beyond. And while you're there, sign up for the Football Guys daily email update. That's up and running again. It's free. Get the biggest stories in football explained, summarized, delivered straight to your inbox every single day. It's great stuff. I love it, and I'm part of it. So get in on that, kids. It's great. So, Armando, I mentioned the best balls, and right now on the site we do have like the shifting values of best balls, and they are changing. Everything changes post-draft, so go check that article out. You'll find the rankings. But let's talk a little bit about the priorities going into a best ball draft for you, balancing floor versus stealing, stacking, injury tolerance. How do all those things factor into your best ball strategies?
Yeah, so I personally like to go with a very balanced approach when it comes to my roster construction. I like the idea of having several floor plays as well as, those hit or miss plays that, that some weeks are going to give you less than 10 fantasy points, and some weeks there's potential for 20 plus, say 18 plus, 15 plus fantasy points. I think getting a good mixture of these kind of players is the way to go. I think stacking is very important. I personally like the idea of, stacking the quarterback with at least two of his weapons there, whether it be a pass catching back, the number one receiver, and number two receiver, the wide receiver one, tight end. Really depends on the situation here. I think with some of the mobile quarterbacks, you can get away without stacking too much. I think that, because of what they do outside of the passing game. So for me, and then as far as, taking on risk, right? How much risk do you want to take on one roster and one team? And when are you taking that risk? Is it an early draft capital that you're taking? The opportunity cost of taking that kind of risk in that round, is it worth it? Like, you have to really think that through. I don't mind taking a little risk with my builds. I put enough volume where, I'm going to have a lot of different players and a lot of different exposures. But if you're only doing, 10 teams, 5 teams, maybe you don't want to take too much risk, right? So it really depends, I guess, on the volume you kind of are putting in and also the risk tolerance you have.
Right. I will be playing in many, many best balls. I have already drafted many, many teams, more than more than a normal person might before the draft. You're taking your chances. You're talking about the risk. You and I have discussed this before. I think what we all agree on as we do this is you can have risk on your roster without having a risky roster. It's mitigating the risks when you take them. And if you go with a more volatile player early, you go with a steadier player a little later, one that maybe gives you that can smooth out the weekly highs and lows of your volatile player early. I think the injury risks, I don't pay as much attention to. I'm pretty injury agnostic. There are players that I get it. Tua Tagovailoa is one hit away from missing significant time, maybe losing a season, right? So I think you do have to take it into account. But is it something you pay a lot of attention to just in general, or is it something specific to best balls where you're kind of you can't make any substitutions, can't make any waiver wire moves? Is it something you maybe pay a little more attention to in best ball?
No, I don't. I just prepare for it, right? Like, so I do pay
Right.
attention. I don't place too much emphasis on it, right? Like, if you draft someone like Tua, you might want to draft 3 quarterbacks instead of taking the 2 quarterback approach, right? If you draft players like that, you might want to do that. Like, sometimes when I take on a lot of risk at a specific position, I'll just draft more. If my build is normally 6 running backs, but I'm taking 2 running backs that have injuries or have had injuries in the past or history of injuries, maybe instead of drafting 6, maybe I go 7, maybe I take 8. Look, so I will change my roster construction and how I build the roster if I am going to take that kind of risk. Kind of, I don't want to say it's hedging, but kind of hedging,
Right.
that risk, so that if indeed they do miss time, I'm not sitting there with a 0 every week at that position.
Yeah, that's the key. So I think, some of who you'll be drafting early in best balls depends on when your pick is, right? I mean, that's going to be the battle in most every draft. So like in most of drafts I'm in, Jamar Chase has been universally the first player off the board. If he's not, Saquon Barkley's right there. Bijan Robinson in that mix as well. You see Jahmyr Gibbs in there. Ashton Genty's climbing up. Justin Jefferson, the usual assortment of characters in there. Who is a guy you're willing to reach a little bit for in the first? So say you're drafting in the first half, like you're going to have to draft in those first 4 or 5 picks to get the Chases, the Jeffersons, Robinsons, Barkleys, maybe the Gibbs. After that, there's maybe a little wiggle room. Who are you willing to reach up for? Like I might reach up a little bit for Malik Neighbors this year. Like he's maybe going closer to the tail end of that first round. I might be willing to dip into the first half of the draft. Are there any players that you're really ready to plant your flag on that you're willing to climb up in the first round? Could it be Ashton Genty or one of the young receivers?
Well, I'm totally fine with Genty. I like the Malik Neighbors call a lot. I was going to actually say him, but since that's your guy, I don't want to do that. I'll say Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's another receiver I like a
Right.
lot, kind of going in that tail end of that first round. That if you take him with one of your top, 5 picks, I'm not completely opposed to that. I think he's someone that has continued to prove that he gives us not only a safe, very weekly floor. There's a big ceiling there for St. Brown. He has some big performances, and he's a big part of this Detroit offense. I expect him to continue to be a part of this Detroit offense. He obviously has great chemistry there with Jared Goff, and I don't see that production going anywhere. He's emerged as one of the better receivers in the NFL. That's why he's going in the first round. So if you take him in the top 5 pick, I have nothing against doing something like that with St. Brown because he's someone I like a lot. I actually think I have him number 3 or 4 on my rankings at the receiver position. So I'm totally fine with him there.
Yeah, he's going as on underdog right now, which is a lot of drafts going on there. I'm also playing best ball 10s. You can play DraftKings. There are many places to play drafters. But Amon-Ra St. Brown on underdog is going at about 9 to 10, right there in 9.5 ADP. He's wide receiver 5. I think that's perfectly fair. What about like some of the guys you think are maybe a little risky in the first round? Like, are we concerned about Puka Nacua or not? I mean, like, there's always players, or can Brian Thomas Jr. duplicate the success he had last year with a new coaching staff and a new setup? Nico Collins is which CJ Stroud are we going to get? Are you pretty confident in his abilities? Are there any of these first rounders that you have concerns with?
No, I don't. I don't have concerns. Like Nakua was the one I was initially concerned about, but once they got rid of Cup, I'm okay with Nakua now. I think he's going to be that guy that we saw. When healthy, we know that he's going to produce at a very high level. There, he's going to be the slot. They're going to have Adams working the outside. So I think adding Adams really helps Nakua because you're going to see him get some open looks as well. So I don't have much concern. I know Christian McCaffrey's kind of going on that turn.
He's
I
climbed back
don't.
up.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable taking him there. Like that's the kind of risk. Like I'm seeing in most ADPs is kind of going in that 13, 14 range between 13 and 15 now. I know that's not the first round, but like that's one player that I cannot.
He's climbed up right to the tail end of the first round
Yeah.
on underdog. I mean, I think people are getting more confident reports the last week or so that he's doing everything, feels great. I mean, that all feels well good. But let's say you have a choice between him, let's say at the tail end of round 1, or Derrick Henry early in round 2. Here's another guy, just got paid, Derrick Henry. Big money contract for the next 2 years, but also he's 31. He'll be 32 before the season is over. What's your level of confidence in him? And looking at some of the backs after him, by the way, I'll just, Devon Achan's going as running back 7. Jonathan Taylor's running back 8, a little later in round 2. Looking a little later, and just before the turn, Josh Jacobs and Bucky Irving.
Yeah, so that's a group of running backs where I don't feel overly confident in several of them. Like Christian McCaffrey, I'm concerned about, like we just talked about. Derrick Henry, I'm totally fine with him there because I do think that he's going to continue to see plenty of volume there in Baltimore. This is a team that when they get to the red zone, they're not going to let Lamar Jackson run the football. They're going to give it to Derrick Henry, and I expect this team to be in the red zone a lot this year. This is one of the best offenses in football here. So I like Derrick Henry at price tag. I like Devon Achane, but I know he stayed healthy last year, but he's not a big body. Like his he's not a big back, and I had a lot of concerns about whether he would be able to, durability for him. He stayed healthy last year, but I'm not willing to pay this price. Yes, can he pay that off? I will have some exposure, but is he someone that I'm going to be all in on, or someone I'm going out of my way to draft every draft? No. The one player here, dude, that I really, really like is Jonathan Taylor there. I absolutely love Jonathan Taylor at this, in this range. I think he's that running back that gives you a steady floor. I think there's massive ceiling there. And regardless of who's under center, I think he's going to be just fine there in Indianapolis. So I like that. Bucky Irving is the one I'm torn in between right now. I
Right.
like what I saw from him as a rookie, but I don't know if I want to pay that kind of draft cap. If he was going, and I know this sounds silly, but if he was going one round later, I'd be much more comfortable drafting him. I
Right.
I don't know. Do you agree with that or?
I probably feel about the same. I'll say this, and we're going to talk about some values, some players we think that are great values here. Um, I'm like probably looking cheaper. I'm looking maybe more at the receiver lane around where I'm looking at him, and maybe getting some of the running backs that are available later. And there's some backs that are available, like I don't want to say way later, but later enough that I really like the appeal. Chase Brown's going after that later in the next round. I think there's a handful of guys that I feel pretty comfortable with that aren't necessarily like that don't have that same question, right? And like we'll talk about the values, but I think even Kyron Williams going after that, I feel way more comfortable with Kyron Williams. James Cook, little hinky there, but Joe Mixon, I think he'll still get the volume. Chuba Hubbard, I think with the tail end of the first 4 round running backs is Chuba Hubbard. I feel super confident in him, so I'm going there. Let's before we jump into the values and start kind of sorting through some of the guys maybe you'll want to be looking for in your later rounds. Uh, what do you feel about stacking? What is the approach? Are you thinking about that when you're making early picks? Like, okay, I'm going to draft a Mike Evans and thinking I can get Baker Mayfield later, or are you putting some of those two things together? Jamar Chase, when am I starting to look for Joe Burrow? Or is like for me, I always go with if I can get it organically. If I'm not having to force the issue, I'm interested. But some people are into forcing the issue.
I don't like forcing the issue. I like the idea of having a plan. Like I do want. There's several stacks that I'm interested in this year. There's several, and I will go with a plan. But I'm not gonna. If there's a player that lands to me, I'm not gonna that I really like. I'm not gonna say, well, no, I can't draft him because I'm trying to stack. That's not the way I draft. I like the idea of going to plan, like you go kind of organically there, where I let the draft fall to me, and then I'll go from there. Now, if I do take a receiver or a pass catcher on an offense that I like, once I get the receiver, yes, I'll try to get the quarterback, like and try to stack that situation. But it's not that I'm drafting with that purpose every time. And sometimes I'll wait around, and I might let the stack go because there's other opportunities. There's a players I like more. There's a value that landed to me that I didn't expect to land to me. So while I plan it, I don't force the issue when it comes to stacking.
I want stacks, but again, I don't want to overpay for stacks because
Correct.
I'm a cheapskate. Also, I don't know how much you keep this in mind. We do have an article on the site, Jeff Bell, right now. The schedules for the playoff schedules for best ball is a very handy thing to look at, right? Based on the playoff matchups for fantasy football season, you're looking down the stretch when you want to matter most. The teams like Minnesota and Dallas play each other. Washington and the Giants, Minnesota and the Giants. Dallas has Washington. I think there's some the Cowboys, Giants, Commanders, and Vikings late in the season look like great players. So if that aids in your stacking, I think that's a good approach as well. Just in general, are you like let's say the tight ends that are going early. We have Brock Bowers. I think these are good examples. Trey McBride, George Kittle, a value play maybe in the 4th round, 2nd round for Bowers, 3rd round for McBride. Are you going to zig when everyone's zagging towards those guys this year, or are you investing in those high priced tight ends?
No, I'm not. I'm zigging and when everyone zags, Bob. I'm not going to be drafting those guys now. And I don't want to say in any right because again, we talk about volume. If I have 100 lineups and I have 2-3 shares of Bowers, it's not that you can't. I don't want to say here and say, oh, I you said you weren't going to draft him. Well, I'm just
Sure.
kind of diversifying my my player exposure. That's all I'm doing in that instance. But no, I don't like the idea of taking a tight end there in those rounds. I prefer kind of waiting around. Um, it's two. They're going round 2 right now, right?
Yeah, Bowers is, and McBride going around
McBride.
3. I feel like McBride has more upside because there's probably likely going to be positive touchdown regression. He's only had what 2 touchdowns last year. He's getting all the targets. You wonder if McBride they're going to go heavily on the run game. That's been the history of Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly. But also, I mean, is Brock Bowers really a tight end? I mean, is he not the de facto wide receiver 1 in this offense? And maybe that changes the dynamic a little bit. I too will have some shares, but I'm not going to overinvest there. I'm probably going to wait a little later. And there's some values. We'll talk about some values by position now. Again, if you're just dialing this up, it's Armando Marsal from Fantasy Guru site. And we're going to talk a little value in best balls. Quarterbacks, seems like there is a target-rich environment. Right? If you want to wait on quarterback, feel free. I'm looking at outside the quarterback 12 range, right? Quarterback 13 starts with Brock Purdy. Dak Prescott has moved up to quarterback 14. Dak Prescott was quarterback 3 through 36 touchdowns in 2023. They just added George Pickens. Now, I get it. We have a new play caller. I think they're going to want to be more balanced. But as your quarterback 2, Drake May, I think we all liked him a little bit last year. Thought the mobility was great. But Jordan Love going after him. Justin Herbert, quarterback 17. Trevor Lawrence, quarterback 18. CJ Stroud, quarterback 19, coming off a rookie season where he was in the top 10. I mean, I'm not interested or excited about J.J. McCarthy. I can take a wait or prove it. Michael Penix Jr., though, quarterback 21. Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback 22. I think some of this is based on risk aversion. Matthew Stafford, now loaded with Devontae Adams at wide receiver, is quarterback 24. Geno Smith, 25. I think these are all reasonable plays. Are any of those that you really favor or that you think is this enough depth that you maybe, man, I might just wait and get a couple of my quarterbacks outside the top 12?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of my roster constructions that take that approach, right? I like Drake May, where he's going quite a bit. CJ Stroud, QB 18, QB 19, depending. I think that's very cheap for someone who has top 10 potential and even higher, right? They've added some weapons there in Houston, so I like him quite a bit. I think he's somebody you can stack. That Houston stack is very easy to do. You're going to invest your first round pick on Nico Collins, but then everyone else is pretty cheap there.
Yep.
So I like the idea of that. I think Jordan Love. The problem with Jordan Love is he's somewhat difficult to stack, right? When you look at this receiving group, so you also have to think that do you want to stack Green Bay, or are you just going to do like a naked love here? And that's the kind of the what you have to think. I love the idea of Stafford as well. He's going very late, like you mentioned. And yeah, you'll probably invest in early draft capital on the receivers, but that you don't have to worry about, the quarterback position for quite a while. So I like that. There, I'm out on Tagovailoa. There's just so much uncertainty there in Miami with Tyreek Hill. Then with his health, Tua's health, or it's a lot of, yes, there's a lot of upside, but I think there's also a lot of risk here. So not too excited about him. Who else? Trevor Lawrence, man. I really, really want to buy in on Trevor Lawrence. Really do. But it just hasn't been great, man. He's someone that I openly say I've missed on a couple of years already. Someone I've been very high on and just hasn't really truly lived up to this expectation. Struggled the last couple of seasons. I think there's a good supporting cast here. I'm excited to see what they do here in Jacksonville, but I will have exposure, but I won't be as aggressive with Trevor Lawrence as I've been in years past.
Yeah, looking at the tail end, I mentioned it kind of cut off was Chuba Hubbard. Then you get into the heading into the 5th round. Some of the running backs available: Alvin Kamara, Kenneth Walker, going very early running backs 18 and 19. RJ Harvey, the rookie in Denver. We think he's going to have a great workload. We think. James Conner, David Montgomery, who has finished very high when in healthy seasons, even playing with Jahmyr Gibbs. Tony Pollard's running back 24. Outside that range, you have Aaron Jones, the lead back, ostensibly for the Minnesota Vikings. DeAndre Swift in Chicago. Brian Robinson Jr. in Washington. Are there players in there you prefer? And why is it Kenneth Walker the third? No, wait, I'm projecting a little bit.
I like Kenneth Walker. you manifested that because I do like Kenneth Walker the third here quite a bit, especially in this format. He's someone I'm going to be targeting, I think, quite a bit. And this is why, if we you said something and I wasn't able to add to what you said, but that you're taking maybe the receiver instead of some of those running backs in that second, third round.
Right. This is why.
I'm in lockstep with you when it comes to that because of this. You mentioned Tony Pollard. I think you're getting yourself a very solidified player there, someone who's going to give you maybe the upside you want in a running back is not going to be there, but that's why you take the upside in the receivers earlier on, and you get
Right.
that floor play in the running back. I love Harvey here. I think that this is a volume based thing. I think he's going to step right into a massive role here in Denver. So I'm in on Harvey as well. I think Montgomery is always a play you could consider here. Yes, you have Gibbs in front of him, but Montgomery's still gonna carve out a solidified role. This is still one of the best offensive lines in football. He's still gonna get goal line work. He's still gonna get short yardage work. So he's gonna be a part of this offense. When healthy, he was that for Detroit last year. There's just so many guys in this range, Bob, that I think you can make a strong case for. You mentioned Joe Mixon earlier. Chuba Hubbard, he's another one I like here quite a bit.
Those are both going as running back twos, people. So you're looking at Chuba Hubbard as right now. Joe Mixon's running back 15. Chuba Hubbard's running back 17. You know they're going to get the full workload. Breece Hall is going as running back 13. He is the first of the running back twos. What's your confidence level in him with the Jets having a new coaching staff? They've talked about Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis being, parts of that offense that maybe they don't have to lean as heavily on Breece Hall. In the end, are we all going to feel stupid for not drafting Breece Hall if we backed off?
I'm not going to feel stupid about because I'm drafting him. I'm going to be drafting all of Breece Hall that I can. He's one of those players that I'm going to be very highly invested in. For that reason, I think he's a first. You can even say second round talent, right? And you're getting him at a discount there. Yes, you are taking on some risk, but the risk is more about the usage than anything else. When you have a running back as talented as Breece Hall, I think it's silly not to use him to his full capacity. So I think they're going to lean on him here. I think having a quarterback like Justin Fields, that's going to help the backfield because now defenses have to worry about what Fields is going to do or not on the ground. So I think Hall's going to get a lot of good opportunities here. He's one of those running backs where I'm taking he's going with the front end of the fourth, back end of the third in most drafts. I'm like it's again. Last year they were taking him first couple of rounds, right? So like this is the kind of talent that he is, and I'm still buying the talent in this instance. And this is the time of the year where you got to kind of remove the noise from the reality, and I feel like that was a little fluff. Those reports that sound a little fluffy to me, Bob. So I'm investing in Hall this year.
All right, so when you get past that groups like the guys we know have certain roles, there is value in these ambiguous backfields if you hit right, if you get it right. I know last year there was like, wow, it's going to be Zach Moss or Chase Brown, and everyone who waited till later and got Chase Brown because we thought Zach Moss was going to be the lead back. Maybe Cincinnati ended up with a great deal. So there are some circumstances where there may be some ambiguous backfields. Some of the youngsters coming in, Dallas is a prime example to me. And maybe Jacksonville, where you have rookies. We have Bashal Tutin coming into Jacksonville. He's going as running back 40. I think Jaden Blue is going as running back 42. Javonte Williams in Dallas, the presumed starter, I think is a pretty reasonable cost at running back 37. Travis Etienne Jr. is 38. So we're looking at Williams, Etienne, Tutin, and Jaden Blue all in a string. If you were playing the ambiguity there and hoping to come in big, are the rookies the guys to invest in, or do you prefer the veterans that have been there? And we can throw Tank Bigsby in there. He's running back 44, right in the same range.
Yeah, so the Jacksonville backfield, that's one that I think it's going to be very difficult to decipher. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we see a full blown committee. If I'm investing in any, probably going to be Bigsby for me. As far as Dallas's backfield, I'm going to go with Blue. I'm going to go with Blue here. I think he's going to get those opportunities. And this is one of those situations where maybe Williams just start out as the lead back and Blue overtakes it eventually, right? Like I think that's kind of what we see here in this situation. And I think there's several backfields like that going into the season. But I think down here, I like the idea of taking handcuffs, right? And I'm not drafting the starter, but like Trey Benson, there was a lot of hype regarding him last year, and then now kind of things have settled down a little bit. The dust has settled. I'm still buying. Why are we not buying? I think Ray Davis is interesting in this range. I think Jalen Wright is interesting in this range. I think Woody Marks.
Garendo.
Woody Marks as a pass. Yes, Garendo's a very
Woody
interesting
Marks
one.
also like a guy that's maybe mixing high ankle sprain away from a more robust role. I agree with that. Rico Dowdle, you could say the same.
Yes.
So yeah, there are a handful of guys. Justice Hill, I'm drafting kind of late.
Interesting.
Keep Mitchell is late available even later if you miss out on that, and there'll be plenty of guys there that we can jump in on. I think a wide receiver, the value's there. I like going earlier at wide receiver than later, but there are some guys that I can't resist late. And my list is always going to start with Adam Thielen, who is ridiculously priced right now. To me, I mean, you're getting him at what, wide receiver 5 or 6, wide receiver 5 prices here. Adam Thielen, wide receiver 63, going at the 142nd pick overall. I mean, like, if he ends up Carolina's wide receiver 1 this year, I know Ted McMillan, everyone's excited, but Thielen has a proven track record, and for that price, there are other guys in that range that I like as well. And maybe you like some. Who are some of your picks of those later round wide receivers?
Yeah, I have some rookies on my mind here. I like Trey Harris. I like Jaden Higgins a lot. I look at Houston last year, right? And they added Kirk. I think that's what we're going to see with Stephon Diggs. Like that's what Stephon Diggs was last year. He's going to work as their slot receiver. They have Nico Collins, who's emerged as a superstar in the NFL. And then we saw Tank Dell very involved. Jaden Higgins and Tank Dell are not the same size or not the same receiver, but he's going to have similar role there. Like he's going to have that outside. Now imagine CJ Stroud, an accurate quarterback, with a big outside receiver alongside Nico Collins. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities here for Jaden Higgins early on. He's someone that really stands out to me there at that ADP. Other guys we could make a case for here. Uh, Man, there's just so many.
Well,
Go ahead.
what if you were looking at San Francisco wide receivers? You got Juwan Jennings going at 34. You got Ricky Pearsall going at 43. You got Brandon Ayuk going at 45. Like, I would like Ricky Pearsall to be the cheapest because I'd have the most shares of him. But I like all the prices on all those guys. Is that Brandon Ayuk, knowing he's coming off the ACL, but it's wide receiver 45. He can be your 4th receiver.
Yeah, and this is where the risk comes into play, right? Like, are you willing to take the risk if he's not fully healthy, or if he's not 100% back, or if he takes a very long time? So you're going to have to draft accordingly. I like the idea. I think that's too cheap for the kind of receiver and the caliber of receiver that Brandon Ayuk is. For me, I'm investing in Jennings. I think that's very cheap. I think
Too.
that I just don't. Like we saw it last year what he could do when they were
Week
missing
3, he
pieces.
was 175-yard week. It was the second highest
Yeah.
receiving total for a fantasy player all year. But if you look down at this range here, and you said some of the rookies, let's go to like starter about right after Ayuk. Got Matthew Golden in Green Bay as wide receiver 46. I mean, that's to me is pretty good value. We've got Luther Burden at wide receiver 51. I know Matt Waldman, our colleague at Football Guys and the author of the Rookie Scouting Portfolio, high on him. Emeka Egbuka, not as high on because the path to workload is not great, but Jaden Higgins seems like he'll have a role. You mentioned Trey Harris. Any of those your favorites of this group?
It's gonna be Higgins for me. I absolutely love Higgins this year. I actually took him in our football diehards a dynasty league. I took him there. I believe it was. So yeah, I like him a lot. I like him like the immediate and long term outlook for him. So it'll be Higgins. Trey Harris is very close second for me, and this is because of the opportunities that I believe they're going to get here this upcoming season.
Yeah, there are roles, and I guess that's the point. Is you're sitting here trying to figure out, wow, I'm going to need 6 or 7 receivers on my roster. What am I going to get late? Well, you're going to get Hollywood Brown at wide receiver 60. You're going to get Thielen at 63. Romeo Doubs at 64. Josh Palmer is a sneaky play. Now that he's in
Yes.
Buffalo, they gave him real money there at wide receiver, 66. Wandale Robinson, maybe a guy that can help you eliminate some of the ups and downs of a high volatility player. So always some values there, and the values at tight end are pretty ridiculous. But so is the risk, right? Just the
Mhm.
volatility of the position outside the top. We mentioned Brock Bowers, McBride, Kittle, the first 3 off the board. Sam Laporta, the 4th. TJ Hawkinson, I'm even a little concerned about. Would like to see a little more from him playing with JJ McCarthy. Jonnu Smith, going as tight end 6, finished up that high last year. Travis Kelce 7. Evan Engram is a guy in a new home that we think is going to be fantastic. How interested are you? We're talking about now, 8th, 9th round. Is that somewhere where like the Evan Ingrams of the world start becoming interesting to you?
Absolutely. I absolutely love this landing spot for him here. I think he's gonna have an immediate impact there in Denver. Bo Nix can now lean on him here, and he's gonna give them something they didn't have last year, right? They didn't have a reliable tight end. They had the running back in the draft in Harvey. Now this offense looks really good, and we've seen tight ends in this Peyton offense, right? We've seen what they're capable of doing. I expect so long as he stays healthy, right? He's the type of tight end that if he stays healthy, there's going to be a lot of production, I think. And this is why I like drafting him. You could take 3 tight ends. You could go with a 3 tight end build taking Ingram because you're not exhausting an early draft capital on him. So you have that flexibility of you're going to get a couple of late round tight ends here. Ingram being one of them, you can get 2 other guys, and there is also the injury risk, of course.
You can get guys who have finished as tight end ones in recent years
Yes.
going as very late tight end twos right now. Mark Andrews is going as tight end 9. The rookies, Colston Loveland at 10, Tyler Warren at 11. David Njoku's going 12 with competent quarterback play. Let's say it was Joe Flacco. I think he was tight end 5 in his stretch with Joe Flacco. Super productive stretch for Flacco. Tucker Kraft, 13. Jake Ferguson, 2 years ago, was inside the top 10, now quarterback, or now tight end 14. Dallas Goedert, now that we know he's with the Eagles, tight end 17. Isaiah Likely, 18. Pat Freiermuth, tight end 19. Brenton Strange, a guy that I could probably roll with any given week, is tight end 20. And Zach Ertz last year was a viable starter week in, week out. He's tight end 21. Hunter Henry, 22. I want to wrap this up with you, though, with the guy that we all think is going to get it done but never does, Kyle Pitts. He's tight end 16. What are you going to do with Kyle Pitts?
I don't know anymore what to do with Kyle Pitts. We've been waiting. I'll definitely have some exposure, but I'm just gonna view him as I'll view him as a tight end 2 for my team. I'm not gonna roll with him as my tight end 1. If he does emerge as that tight end 1, that'll be great for my roster. But I'd be drafting him as a tight end 2, maybe a tight end 3. I honestly like the idea, like you just kind of mentioned, like Evan Ingram, David Njoku. These are guys that are going a little bit later and kind of double dipping in that range, right? Like you could double dip in that range. I think really
We do
late,
it with
someone like
quarterbacks a lot. I think we're going to start doing it with tight ends.
I think someone like Mike Gesicki's very. Yeah, I lost you there for a second, but I think someone like Mike Gesicki is very interesting too. Like if you're waiting for this, especially this is the format for a player like Mike Gesicki because you're not going to get that consistent weekly floor, but there are going to be those spike weeks out of him, and this is an offense that's going to score a lot of points. I think this season. So yeah, I like the idea of waiting around because look at all of the options you have back here. You know,
right. Again, it's kind of like quarterbacks. You take a guy that you feel pretty comfortable with, but you can get like a 10th, 12th, quarterback 10 through 12 through 14, then wait till even later and, to get you as your first quarterback, and then get one later. I think it's same as tight end, which is kind of, we've seen as like a little more barren, but it seems like there's a lot of pieces out there I like late. One of the pieces I like all the time is Armando Marsal. I want to thank him for coming on. This is just starting the best ball conversation, people. We'll be touching on this over the course of time. It kind of helps us set values as we get to the drafts that matter most for us. I want to remind you all to grab the Rookie Draft Guide 3.0 and sign up for the free Football Guys daily email update. Stay sharp, stay ready, and stay ahead of your competition. It's a great thing. Armando, what should we be looking from you in the coming days and weeks?
Oh, Mind the Marsal podcast. We've been doing the team previews there. That we already wrapped up the AFC. We wrapped up the AFC. NFC starts this week. I got lots of content coming out now. I got tight end outlooks coming out June 1st or June 2nd. I'm sorry, will be out there on fantasyguru.com, and just all of my content can be found there. And Mind the Marsal, two podcasts every week, 2 episodes every week now. Between now and the start of the season, and as the season continues, I plan on continuing doing 2 episodes per week.
As you can see under his name there, find him on the X at Armando_Marsal. Find me at Football Diehards, and I'm Bob Harris. Thanks for coming by the hot seat this week. We'll see you again next Tuesday.